Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaridhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaridhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Apni bolo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, 10th Canto, Text 34. The opulence of the Absolute. Mrityu sarva harashchaham udbhavascha bhavishyatam kirti shrirvat cha narinam shmitir medhadrita shama. Mrityu, death. Sarvahara, all devouring. Cha, also. Aham, I am. Udbhava, generation. Cha, also. Bhavishyatam, of future manifestations. Kriti, fame. Shri, opulence or beauty. Vak, fine speech. Cha, also. Narinam, of women. Smriti, memory. Medha, intelligence. Dripti, firmness. Shama, patience. Krishna says, I am all devouring death, and I am the generating principle of all that is yet to be. Among women I am fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience. Purport. As soon as a man is born, he dies at every moment. Hi. We're reading from Bhagavad Gita. If you'd like to hear, make yourself comfortable. As soon as a man is born, he dies at every moment. Thus, death is devouring every living entity at every moment. But the last stroke is called death itself. That death is Krishna. As for future development, all living entities undergo 6 basic changes. They are born. They grow. They remain for some time. They reproduce. They dwindle. And finally, they vanish. Of these changes, the first is deliverance from the womb, and that is Krishna. The first generation is the beginning of all future activities. The 7 opulences listed, fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience, are considered feminine. If a person possesses all of them or some of them, he becomes glorious. If a man is famous as a righteous man, that makes him glorious. Sanskrit is a perfect language, and it is therefore very glorious. If after studying one can remember a subject matter, he is gifted with a good memory, or a smriti, and the ability not only to read many books on different subject matters, but to understand them and apply them when necessary is intelligence, medha. Another opulence. The ability to overcome unsteadiness is called firmness or steadfastness, dhriti. And when one is fully qualified, yet is humble and gentle, and when one is able to keep his balance, both in sorrow and in the ecstasy of joy, he has the opulence called patience, shama. So as soon as a man is born, he dies at every moment. Thus death is devouring every living entity at every moment, but the last stroke is called death itself. I saw a couple of news headlines today about people, 32,000 people were killed yesterday trying to protest the government in Iran, and 30 people died unexpectedly in a snowstorm in California. And this is the problem with these material bodies, is that at any time we could die. We never know when that's going to be. So it's important to live your life for something worthwhile. If you don't live for something, then you live for nothing. So, what do you want to give your life to? That's what you have to, that's what every person with a human body has to make a decision. In the lower species of life, cats and dogs, animals, there's a whole zoo in Dallas full of animals. And they don't have animals don't have a purpose in life beyond eating and sleeping and making more animals and defending one another. Every creature, Krishna builds in all the equipment you need for these 4 things in every material body: to eat, sleep, reproduce, and defend. Because in the material world, living entities are envious of one another, and people want what somebody else has. So, or in animals, they fight. Like if you try to feed some birds, for instance, that's something I do often. I like to feed birds, because if there's a bunch of rice, I know that the birds will like it. So if I throw rice out to birds, then I find that they always fight over it. And the biggest birds, like I spend a lot of time in Mayapur, India. So on the roof of the building that I live on, I like to bring up, leftover prasadam and rice and things, especially rice. In Bengal there's a lot of rice, so it's not hard to find a bag of rice. Quite cheap. 50 rupees, you can get a sizable amount. But when I feed the birds, then I have to have it I have to kind of spread it out because they'll kill each other trying to eat. So that's called animal life. Animal life means you just act on the bodily platform and try to enjoy, like cats sleep 16 hours a day, right? If they can find a nice, comfortable spot. They just like to they spend their whole life sleeping. And bears like to sleep 6 months. So sleeping is taken very seriously. In defense, animals, they all have some kind of defense. Either they have a defense to be able to run away from a problem, like rabbits and birds, or they have claws and teeth, and that they can fight with another animal with. So eating, of course, sleeping, defending, and of course reproducing. The basic principle of material existence is the attraction between male and female. And so the whole world is moving, is motivated in gear for that pleasure, that matunyati tucham, that the pleasure of touch. So in the human form of life is a great opportunity. And there's 8,400,000 different species of life. Only 400,000 of them are the human species. So one might say, well, what do I have to do with those other species? I'm not a cat, I'm not a dog, I'm a human. Well, that's nice because you have a human body, but you're still a spirit soul that's eternal. So one who's taken birth, death is certain. And for one who's died, birth is certain. As the soul changes from youth to old age, as the body changes from youth to old age, the soul remains unchanged. There was my mother, she died at 91 years old. And just a couple weeks before she passed away was her 91st birthday. So I sent her a letter, and I quoted this. I wrote from the letter. I just verbatim wrote what Prabhupada said to my mom. All living entities undergo 6 basic changes. That means when you're born, then you grow, and they remain for some time. They reproduce, they dwindle, and finally they vanish. Of these changes, the first is deliverance from the womb, and that is Krishna. The first generation is the beginning of all fruitive activities. So, so the body's changing, but soul is eternal. It's not slain when the body is slain. Have anybody here had a loved one that died? Somebody that was very close to you? Okay, yeah, our mother, maybe our father, our grandparents, or it may even be a young person. You never know. People die at all ages. They die under all kinds of circumstances. And then when the body is killed, when it deteriorates, it disintegrates, the soul moves on. It's kind of like getting a new car. Like if you see a car go by, and it's somebody you know, you say, hey, there's my friend. Are you talking about the car? Or are you talking about the driver? Right. The car's not really your friend. But when you see the car go by with your friend in it, hey, there's my friend. So the same way, when the body we see each other right now as with the body, our material body, how we look at whatever age we are. And then when the body dies, then we leave it and we go into another body. So this can go on for a real long time. In higher planets, people live, they live a lot longer, but they still die. Or people in other ages. For instance, in Dwapara Yuga, people lived to be 1,000 years old. There was a king named Yayati, and he was he lived a long time, but it was just normal. I think it was he was from the Treta Yuga. But he had he had an incident where he offended somebody, and then he got cursed to have old age. But then he got to trade the old age for youth. So he had some sons, and he wanted to get rid of the old age. He had to find somebody young to agree to accept the old age. So he had one son named Yadu, who's the head of the Yadu dynasty. And Yadu didn't want to take the old age because he wanted to grow naturally and develop his Krishna consciousness. He wanted more time so that when he did get old and die, then he could go back to God, go back to Krishna, and not take birth again. And then, but Puru, he was the other son of King Yayati, and he said, "Okay, I'll take the old age. I don't mind. I'm going to have to get old someday anyway. Might as well just right now, because after all, it's inevitable. And I should be a good son, taking the old age from my father." So King Yayati got his youth back, and he married a girl named Devyani, and that was his queen, and they enjoyed intimate relationship for 1,000 years. That's a long time. But back then, it wasn't such a long time. It was like 10 years of today's years, because every age that is different, People lived 1,000 years in Dwapara Yuga. They lived 10,000 years. And in the Treta Yuga and the Satya Yuga, they lived 100,000 years. So it's kind of it's so relative, that basically, no matter how long you live, according to the body that you have, you go through these different changes. You're born, you grow, you remain, you reproduce, you dwindle, and finally you vanish. So the body's like that. And when you're really fortunate, then eventually, after going through so many different bodies and being born and dying in so many different species of life, then eventually you come to the human form of life. So in the human form of life, you have a lot more, you have opportunity that's not available in the other species of life, which is to understand who you are, who Krishna is, and there are 5 things the Bhagavad Gita talk about. Anyway, you have a higher intelligence in the human form of life. None of the animals are endowed with. For instance, building things. Of course, birds can build nests, but most animals don't really know how to build something like this temple, or they can't. They don't know how to make bridges to get across the water. But some of them, of course, animals may have some of these things, but the one thing that animals don't have is the intelligence to understand who God is and understand who the soul is. And that's called knowledge. And we get this from the Bhagavad Gita. And as a human, you can make choices that can end your material existence. Like, you can choose what you want to do with your life. What do you want to live for? What do you want to die for? let's say, so what do you want to live for? What is like your goal in life? Okay, here's a man who wants to become a pure devotee. Wow. Well, that's a great goal. It's something worth living for. It's even something worth dying for, frankly, because whatever we live for is what we end up dying for. And most human lives don't usually add up to much. People live for temporary things, and well, under the different modes of nature, like some people in the mode of ignorance, they just live to be homeless people, and the only thing they worry about is getting drunk every day. If they feel like if they can just find a place to sleep, and they can get a case of beer, then there's nothing else they need. They live for that. That's called the mode of ignorance. And then there's people in the mode of passion, and what do they live for? Their career. They become very enthusiastic and go to school. A lot of people here. Is everybody here an engineer? You're an engineer, right? An engineer. Are you an engineer? %95 of the Indians in Dallas are engineers. So, because they're very successful. So, how do you become an engineer? Well, you go to school for how long? You get your master's degree? Yeah, to get a master's degree in engineering, how many years does that take? 6 or 7 years on top of high school. So there's a good 18 years of studying. Wow, that takes a lot of determination. And then you graduate, and then you get the wonderful job, hopefully, that pays a whole lot of money. And then you can you get married and build a house or buy a house and get a car and get so many different possessions. And that's the success in life for people in the mode of passion. And people in the mode of goodness, they have higher goals, like becoming a pure devotee, for instance, becoming Krishna conscious, becoming liberated, becoming clean and truthful and compassionate and patient and tolerance, and they live their life in pursuit of self-realization, and that's called happiness in the mode of goodness. When that desire brings the person to the platform of devotional service, to serving Krishna, then that becomes Suddha Sattva, pure goodness. And when you attain that consciousness, then after you leave your body, you go to Krishna, or you're born into a family of devotees with opportunities to continue this pursuit of becoming a pure devotee. Because the material world is, as long as we have a material body, there's so many sufferings that come with it. That actually, one time Srila Prabhupada told me that this material body is the source of all of our miseries. And when he said that, I tried to think of any misery that I have that's not coming from the body. But all the miseries we have are due to the body. Or, there's the misery of losing a loved one. There's the misery that comes from people harassing us. Have you ever had somebody who doesn't like you and they give you trouble? Most people have that experience. And then there's bugs and all kinds of creatures that give us trouble. You might have a house full of cockroaches, God forbid, or rats, or mosquitoes, or like just if you just have one mosquito and buzzing around your head while you're trying to sleep at night, it can really be a lot of trouble, right? It can keep you from getting any rest. So there's sufferings. As long as we have a material body, we get sufferings that come from other living entities, be they people or animals or insects, snakes. Fortunately, we don't have a big snake problem here, but sometimes some people have some pretty serious snake problems, especially in India. You can have a snake when you open up your bathroom and there's a snake. So snakes are problems. So that's the other living entities that give you trouble. And then there's the miseries that come from the own body and the mind. You ever had a headache? Or you have a sore throat? Or, there's all kinds of different ailments that the body can provide for you. And there's miseries that come from the weather. Like today was seriously cold. Yesterday was a really nice day. Sometimes the weather is real nice, very pleasant, springtime. But most of the time the weather can be really bad, especially, downpour or hail. One time I was at Whole Foods up here, and they had a freak hailstorm. And I had I came on the motorcycle. It was a beautiful day, but then all of a sudden this hail came down. Hail is ice, and ice in the size of baseballs. It was amazing. The hail came down so hard that it broke all the windshields of every car in the parking lot within just a couple minutes, right in front of our eyes, and left bumps all over the cars. And then, fortunately, Lord Indra turned that off after a few minutes, after about 15 minutes. I was thinking if this just kept on coming down, everybody be wiped out, But fortunately, it was just a short hailstorm. But it was extremely destructive. And if anybody was caught in it, they'd be killed just by just right here in Dallas, just right in the middle of the day with what's coming out of the sky. That's called Adi Devik. And then sometimes it snows. Remember, like a couple of weeks ago, it was snowing, and the whole town shut down. We could, nobody go to school or work. It was a snowstorm. So miseries come from the weather. They come from the other living entities, and they come from the body and mind. And then we have this birth. Well, like I was saying, I wrote to my mom about these different changes, and then because she knew that the doctor told her that she was going very soon, so I was trying to prepare her as much as possible. She lived up in Washington, so we went up there to visit her a few months before she passed away and took her to the temple in Seattle area, to the Hare Krishna temple, ISKCON temple. And my mom, she was, she's old World War II generation. She's pretty conditioned in her ways and wasn't really into a lot of spiritual stuff as far as until, now she's gotten old. Her husband has died, and she knows she's going to die. And it's like great news to find out that she's actually going to continue living, or that her husband is still alive, or that whoever, or that your mother is still alive somewhere, right? She the body died, but she's still alive, so she moves on. That's why Krishna told Arjuna, all these people on this battlefield, Battle of Kurukshetra, they're all going to die one way or another. You can take the credit by performing your duty as a soldier and winning this war, and they can die in that way. Or if you refuse to fight, they're still going to die. It's just a matter of time. So it gets the repeated birth and death in the different species of life eventually starts getting kind of old. You start feeling like I can't go through this anymore. There's got to be something better than just getting attached to things and then getting old and then dying. So the Bhagavad Gita describes 5 different subject matters. The first one is Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, Ishwar. Ishwar, it's the first thing that Bhagavad Gita is about is Krishna and Arjuna, right? And then it starts off with the battle of the Kurukshetra, and the whole story of the Mahabharata. Now, one thing all of you probably know something about the Mahabharata, right? Because you're all from India. Do you have an Indian background? No. Okay. Huh? Same thing. I'm sorry, but I know they're different countries, but you can't really tell when you're there. The point is, Nepal also has the history of the Mahabharata. Yeah. So when I first went to a Hare Krishna temple, they sold me a Bhagavad Gita and a couple other books. So I came home and I opened up the book and it said Sri Dhritarashtra Vacha, and I was like, what is? I never see. First of all, Dhritarashtra is spelled without any vowels. It's DHRT. Like, it's like I couldn't make any sense of the word. How can why doesn't this word have any vowels in it? And Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya and the Kurukshetra, Dharmakshetra, Kurukshetra, Krishna says. So, as a Westerner, I'd never heard the word Mahabharata, what to speak of knowing what the story is. So the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita didn't really make any sense to me. So I went to the next chapter. And the next chapter was the contents of the Gita summarized. And in that chapter, it describes the soul. So Bhagavad Gita is first about Bhagavan, Ishwar, and it's about the soul. Now, for the soul, there's neither birth nor death. Never having one span does it ever cease to be. It's the real you. Actually, you don't even really need a material body because the soul is eternal, and only because it's in the material world does it have a material body. But when you were mentioning you want to become a pure devotee, well, that's a good goal, because if you do become a devotee of Krishna, then you don't have to, then you go to Krishna's abode after you die. Excuse me. Every religion has a concept of something better than this world, that there's a kingdom of God. Like I grew up in my tradition was a Christianity, and one thing we have is kind of basic. There's some similarities in every religion. One thing is that in every religion they think that there's a better place, that you can go to a better place if you're religious in this life. Then you can go to heaven, go to the spiritual world. When you leave your body, things are better. So you want to live your life so that so your goal in life is to become free from all miseries by attaining love for Krishna, and then having true happiness, the happiness that we're always looking for, the happiness that comes from loving God. Prabhupada said that any religion is good if it teaches you how to love God. So when you love God, then you serve God, and God reciprocates. That's why we're all here for the darshan, right? You're looking forward to seeing Shri Radha Kalachandji. They're going to open up in 15 minutes or so. And because there's some happiness, right? We all have. Is anybody here for the first time? No. So why did we come back after last time? What brought you here tonight? What brought you to the temple tonight? What reason made you feel like coming here? Sorry? You want to have the darshana Sri Radha Kalachandji because it's ecstatic. When these curtains open, then you get to see God in all His splendor, and that's beautiful. It gives happiness and nourishment to the eyes and the heart, and everything is you just feel better all over. So we keep on coming back, to come see Sri Radha Kalachandji every chance we get, and that happiness increases even more when you chant the Lord's holy names. When we start glorifying the Lord through song, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As soon as we say that mantra, then it cleanses our heart of all kinds of misgivings and dust that's accumulated for so many lifetimes. And we become purified because Krishna and His name are non-different. So therefore, we have what's called the Hare Krishna movement, because we're spreading the holy names of Krishna. I knew a man that met Srila Prabhupada in 1969 in California for just 5 minutes. He was in Vietnam for 2 tours on a Navy boat, and he just arrived from Southeast Asia, and he saw Srila Prabhupada coming down the street with a couple of devotees in Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley, California. So he said, "I beg your pardon, sir, you appear to be a monk." Because Srila Prabhupada, he could pass for a Buddhist monk, right? If he didn't really know much, the difference between one monk or another. So he thought he was a Buddhist monk. And then Prabhupada explained to him, "No, I am not Buddhist. I'm representing my spiritual master. I have a mission for my spiritual master to spread the chanting, the singing, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra all over the world, and I'm performing that mission." So, the man I know, Jay Jones, who had that conversation with Srila Prabhupada, it had such an impression on him. He never forgot. It was, even though it was just a short few-minute thing, he always remembered. And then he used to come to this temple. He's passed on since then. But that gives you more happiness. There's a lot of bliss seeing Radha Kalachandji, and then we have kirtan. Then there's even more happiness, right? It comes, especially according to our ability to receive the holy name, reciprocate with the holy name, with knowing that it's non-different from Krishna. And then, if you want to really become ecstatic, then you spread the Hare Krishna mantra to other people. Then you join the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya, with the purpose is to give people the opportunity to chant Hare Krishna and to have this transcendental knowledge and to spread it all over the world. So that's done through, we have a 3-pronged approach to spreading Krishna consciousness. One of them is book distribution. Actually, we're taking part in book distribution right now. How are we part of book distribution right now? Well, I'm reading from a book. I'm distributing the knowledge that's inside of it to all of you who've so kindly come in to listen. So that's called book distribution. And there's the chanting, what we call Harinam Sankirtan, where we take the kirtan. Instead of waiting for everybody to come here to the temple, we'll pull out the door and go, and we'll bring the temple to the people by the Church of the Holy Name. Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls it, Church of the Holy Name. We take the temple practices and we bring them out to the folks outside. This practice is gone on in India in the place called Puri, Jagannath Puri. Jagannath Puri, there's a big temple of Lord Jagannath, which is one of Krishna's forms. And inside the temple is wonderful chanting, dancing, prasadam, and transcendental literatures. But if you're not born in India, you don't get to go inside. Maybe even if you are born in India, you might not be able to get inside. Anyway, they don't let everybody in. But Lord Jagannath is so merciful that he comes out and he gets on the cart, and that's called the Rath Yatra Festival. Has everybody here ever been to a Rath Yatra Festival? Rath Yatra festivals are all over the world nowadays. But at one time they were only in one place, and that was in Jagannath Puri. But that's the idea, that because not everybody can come to the temple, Lord Jagannath comes on out. And he gets up on that cart, and then he gives darshan and the kirtan and prasadam for a lot of people. Have you ever seen the picture of Puri on a Rath Yatra day? It's just an ocean of people, all very close together. You know, I mean, you couldn't get a cat in there. It's millions of people. Or like Kumbh Mela, that's another one. Somehow they get 17 million people in one corner, where the Triveni, you know, the Saraswati and the Yamuna and the Ganga come together. So those are called festivals, you know. And we have Rath Yatra here. We have a lot of festivals to try to come out, but especially the Rath Yatra is certainly the most merciful festival because it goes to the most people. You know, we have Rath Yatra here every year, and we have it, and hundreds of thousands of people get to take part, even if it's just watching us go by. And then so that's called Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, Amrita Swadanam. Amrit means pure. It's relishable. It's ecstatic. It's happy. So that's the next thing that we want to do, is give Krishna consciousness to others. So it starts with, you see the deities, and then you can start chanting Hare Krishna. And then if you go out and distribute Krishna consciousness to others, then your transcendental ecstasy will simply just increase and increase. And there's no limit to transcendental spiritual happiness. If we can let go, one time Shiva Ram Swami told me, if you can just let go of the happiness of the material world, the sense pleasures, and give yourself to Krishna, then there's no limit to the happiness that you can attain. So, Ishwar, the Jiva, and karma, however, every action there's a reaction, you know, and how what we do today, what choices we make now will result in what happens, you know, to us in the future. That's called karma. And then there's the nature. Like I mentioned, there's the different modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And so there's karma. Oh, and time. Time is what this verse today we said. Krishna says, "I am all-devouring death." So Krishna is time, and time is always running out, isn't it? So when time totally runs out, that's called death. And it's time's up. And we have to go to another material body. Or we can go back to the spiritual world, depending on what we prepared ourselves for when we had this human life and this opportunities that we took advantage and what we lived for. Like one time we had a house and that was the house of Lord